Welcome back to the Path to Peace Therapy podcast. I'm Stephanie Buckley, parenting strategist and family systems coach. I specialize in ADHD, anxiety, and family system dynamics. I'm also a mother to a thriving 23-year-old neurodivergent son who has ADHD, and I've been married for over 3 decades. I blend lived experience and neuroscience to help families move from reaction to regulation and from chaos to clarity. In today's episode, we're breaking down what it really means when a family is running on stress hormones. We're going to talk about cortisol, the amygdala, and how chronic activation quietly reshapes tone, reactions, sleep, patience, and connection inside a home. But before we go further, I want to speak directly to the parent who is quietly exhausted. The quiet and exhausted parent, the one who wakes up already tired, the one who braces before asking a simple question, the one who measures tone before speaking, the one who feels the tension in the house before anyone says a word. Are you tired of small things turning big? Are you tired of apologizing for your tone? Are you tired of your child melting down at transitions? Are you tired of feeling like you're managing emotions all day long? Do you ever sit in your car for a minute before going inside because you just need one more minute to collect your thoughts? Do you ever think, what if it's not about parenting harder? What if it's not about your child being difficult? What if your family is simply living in a body that hasn't felt safe in a while? Because when cortisol runs high, patience runs low. When the amygdala is constantly scanning, everyone feels misunderstood. When the nervous system doesn't reset, relationships start to fray. If you are desperate for steadiness, not perfection, just steadiness, this episode is for you. Let's talk about what's really happening underneath the reactions. What if your family is not difficult? What if your family is running on stress hormones? Because when cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, becomes chronically elevated, behavior changes, tone shifts, patience shrinks, sleep fragments, irritability increases, and what looks like a personality problem is often a nervous system pattern. Let's break this down carefully. What is cortisol? Cortisol is not bad, but it is adaptive. It wakes you up in the morning. It mobilizes glucose for energy. It increases alertness. It helps you perform under pressure. The issue is not cortisol itself. The issue is baseline cortisol. Baseline cortisol refers to your nervous system's resting stress level. Not how you respond during a crisis, but how activated your body is when nothing urgent is happening. When baseline cortisol is elevated, the body never fully returns to neutral. It stays slightly braced. This may look like waking up tense before the day begins, feeling like something always needs to be handled. Perhaps it is difficulty relaxing even during downtime, or it could be snapping over minor inconveniences. Now let's talk about the amygdala, because this is central. The amygdala is a small almond-shaped structure deep in the brain's limbic system. Its job is survival. It scans constantly for threat, social threat, physical threat, emotional threat. When it perceives danger, it activates the stress response, signaling the HPA axis to release cortisol. The amygdala does not distinguish well between a bear in the woods, a harsh tone, a forgotten homework assignment, or a disappointed facial expression. To the amygdala, unpredictability equals danger. When cortisol remains elevated chronically, the amygdala becomes more sensitive. This is called amygdala hyperreactivity. It fires more quickly and more intensely. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for impulse control, planning, empathy, and flexible thinking, becomes less efficient under prolonged stress. So what happens? The amygdala gets louder, the prefrontal cortex gets quieter. That is when families start reacting instead of responding. Emotional threshold refers to how much stimulation it takes to provoke a reaction. In a regulated nervous system, The threshold is higher. Small inconveniences stay small. When baseline cortisol is high, emotional threshold drops. A request to clean a room feels like criticism. A sibling bump becomes a fight. A tone shift is interpreted as rejection. A minor schedule change causes tears or shutdown. The amygdala is interpreting neutral stimuli as threat, activating cortisol again. The prefrontal cortex struggles to intervene. Parents often say, "Why is everything such a big deal?" Because biologically, it feels like one to a child who is neurodivergent. Transitions require executive function. Executive functioning refers to the brain's management system skills, like impulse control, task initiation, emotional regulation, and shifting attention. These functions are largely governed by the prefrontal cortex, moving from a screen to dinner time, from practice to doing homework, from weekend back to Monday morning. When cortisol is elevated, prefrontal efficiency decreases. The brain resists shifting because the amygdala interprets interruption as instability. This is why transitions become battlegrounds in high-stress families. It is not defiance. It is neurologically reduced flexibility under stress load. Hypervigilance. When the house feels on edge. Hypervigilance is a state of chronic scanning for danger. It develops when the nervous system has learned that unpredictability is frequent. In a family, hypervigilance looks like watching tone carefully, reading into facial expressions, over-explaining to avoid conflict, avoiding topics to prevent escalation, walking on eggshells. You may hear, "Why are you so mad?" Or I didn't mean it like that. Are we okay? When the amygdala is sensitized by chronic cortisol exposure, it searches for threat cues even when safety is present. The house may appear calm, but everyone feels slightly braced, diurnal rhythm, and sleep disruption. Cortisol follows a diurnal rhythm, meaning a 24-hour hormonal cycle. It should peak in the morning and decline gradually throughout the day, reaching its lowest levels at night so melatonin can rise and initiate sleep. When baseline cortisol is elevated, this rhythm shifts. You may see children getting a second wind late at night, adults feeling wired but tired, difficulty falling asleep, early waking with racing thoughts. Nighttime anxiety spikes. Sleep disruption then elevates cortisol the following day, creating a self-perpetuating loop. Exercise metabolizes cortisol. Aerobic movement burns stress hormones and releases endorphins, which are endogenous opioids that create temporary calm. If someone in your family is only regulated when moving, calm after soccer, pleasant after the gym, relaxed after a run, that tells you movement is functioning as their primary regulator. But compensation is not resolution. If rest days trigger irritability or downtime feels uncomfortable, that suggests high baseline stress is being managed through activity rather than reduced at the source. Screens as artificial dopamine regulation. When cortisol is high, the brain seeks dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with reward and motivation. Dopamine can temporarily counterbalance stress signals. Screens provide rapid dopamine spikes. If removing screens causes explosive reactions, it may indicate that the nervous system was using digital stimulation as a chemical stabilizer. You might notice, mood improves instantly with screens. Mood drops sharply when screens end. Boredom feels intolerable. Rest days become screen-heavy. This is not just behavioral addiction. It is stress chemistry seeking relief. Chronic stress presents in two patterns. Hyperarousal is elevated cortisol. Reactive, intense, impatient, hypervigilant. Hypoarousal, often described as burnout, reflects a flattened stress response after prolonged activation. It looks like exhaustion, numbness, low motivation, withdrawal, and brain fog. Families often oscillate between both intense during busy weeks and then depleted on weekends. Both patterns reflect nervous system dysregulation, how cortisol actually lowers. Safety signals are repetitive environmental cues that teach the nervous system that threat is low. The nervous system does not calm because someone says, relax. It calms because repeated experience teaches predictability. Stable sleep. What that means biologically? Stable sleep is not just enough hours. It means consistent timing, sufficient duration, and predictable wind-down routines. Biologically, sleep is when cortisol should be lowest and melatonin highest. When sleep timing varies drastically late nights, inconsistent bedtimes, scrolling until midnight, cortisol remains elevated into the evening. Stable sleep includes similar bedtime and wake time daily within 30 to 60 minutes. Reduced light exposure before bed, which means watching TV, using an iPad, playing video games, using a computer. Cool, dark, sleeping environment. No intense stimulation in the hour before bed. In children, stable sleep improves. Impulse control, emotional flexibility, executive functioning, and frustration tolerance. In adults, it reduces irritability and improves cognitive clarity. Sleep is not passive rest. It is the time the nervous system can repair itself. Morning sunlight, why it regulates stress chemistry. Morning sunlight exposure, ideally within 10 to 20 minutes of waking, helps anchor circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm refers to the body's internal 24-hour biological clock. Natural light hitting the retina signals the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the brain, which helps regulate cortisol timing and melatonin release later in the evening. In simple terms, sunlight in the morning tells the body when to be alert, which makes it easier to be sleepy at night. Without morning light, cortisol timing drifts. That drift often results in difficulty falling asleep, late night second winds, morning sluggishness, mood volatility. Even 10 to 15 minutes outside, walking the dog, drinking coffee on the porch, or driving with natural light exposure can help reset this rhythm. For kids, walking into school instead of being dropped curbside can make a difference. Light is not just visual, it is hormonal instruction. Repair after conflict, what it actually looks like. Repair after conflict is one of the strongest relational safety signals in a family system. Repair means actively returning to emotional connection after a rupture. A rupture could be raised voices, a sharp tone, a slammed door, a moment of impatience, a misinterpretation. Repair looks like, I didn't like how I handled that. Let me try again. I was overwhelmed. You didn't deserve that tone. I'm not mad at you. I was frustrated. A hug, eye contact. A calm follow-up conversation. Repair teaches the amygdala that conflict does not equal abandonment. It tells the nervous system that relationship remains intact after tension. Without repair, the amygdala stores the interaction as unresolved threat. Over time, this builds hypervigilance. With repair, the brain learns, tension can happen, connection returns. We are safe. Repair lowers baseline stress more than perfection ever could. Calm tone, clear expectations, stable sleep, reduced evening stimulation, gut stability. Baseline cortisol lowers slowly through consistency, not intensity. Protein-forward breakfasts. Protein-forward breakfast. A protein-forward breakfast means consuming at least 20 to 30 grams of protein within the first 30 to 60 minutes of waking. This could include eggs with avocado, Greek yogurt with nuts and berries, cottage cheese, a protein smoothie with whey or pea protein, turkey sausage with fruit, or a protein shake paired with something whole food based like oatmeal. Why is this important? Because cortisol is naturally highest in the morning. That's normal. It's called the cortisol awakening response. But if a child or adult wakes up and only consumes carbohydrates, toast, cereal, waffles, fruit alone, blood sugar spikes, and then crashes, that crash signals stress. The body releases more cortisol to stabilize blood glucose. Protein stabilizes blood sugar. Stable blood sugar prevents secondary cortisol spikes. When blood sugar is steady, the amygdala receives fewer internal distress signals. That lowers baseline irritability throughout the day. In children, you'll often see fewer mid-morning meltdowns, better frustration tolerance at school, more stable energy into early afternoon. This is not about dieting. It is about neurochemical steadiness, predictable routines. If your family feels reactive, tense, irritable, or constantly on edge, it may not be a character flaw. It may be a stress hormone pattern. When you understand that cortisol and amygdala sensitivity are shaping behavior, you stop blaming personality and start designing systems. You shift from, what's wrong with us? TTO, what signals of safety are missing? That is biological advocacy. That is family systems thinking. That is moving from reaction to regulation. Reduced evening stimulation means turning off screens 60 minutes before bed, avoiding high-conflict conversations late at night, dimming lights, engaging in slower activities, reading, stretching, calm music. The goal is to signal to the amygdala that the environment is shifting from activation to restoration. Families often see dramatic improvements in bedtime behavior simply by adjusting evening input. Bringing it together. Safety signals are not dramatic interventions. They are repeated, predictable cues that teach the nervous system that threat is low. Morning protein prevents stress spikes. Sunlight anchors hormonal rhythm. Repair protects attachment security. Stable sleep restores regulatory capacity. Reduced evening stimulation prevents late cortisol activation. Gut stability supports serotonin balance. When these inputs are consistent, baseline cortisol lowers slowly over weeks. Emotional threshold rises. Reactivity decreases. Flexibility improves. Safety is built through repetition. And that is how families move from running on stress hormones to running on stability. If today's episode resonated with you, I want you to pause and consider this. What if nothing is wrong with your family? What if your nervous systems are simply overloaded? When we understand cortisol, the amygdala, and stress chemistry, we stop personalizing behavior and start regulating biology. And that shift alone can change the emotional climate of a home. If you found this helpful, share it with another parent who may be mistaking stress hormones for personality flaws. These conversations matter. If you'd like support designing calmer systems inside your home, you can reach me directly at Stephanie B. at thepathtopeacetherapy.com. I work with parents who want practical tools, deeper understanding, and long-term regulation, not just surface-level behavior fixes. You can also learn more at thepathtopeacetherapy.com and follow along on Instagram at thepathtopeacetherapy for more neuroscience-based parenting insights. And remember, calm is not accidental. It is built through consistency, clarity, and connection.